I'm eager to talk about the contents of this incredible harmonica instruction book by Max De Aloe. I've broken down my discussion into 4 broad topics. And I had a couple false starts where I just was going through kind of page by page and chapter by chapter and rambling on and on. And I think this outline will help me to be more concise. So four broad categories. Here's my list. Ready for this? No slide until chapter 5. 7 keys and then all keys. Lists. What kind of exercises are in each chapter? So let's talk about this first one, no slide until chapter 4. That's absolutely true. This book gets you playing the harmonica without using the slide. Chapter 1 is an introduction. Well, there's an introduction and then there's chapter 1. But chapter 1 talks about the basics. It starts at the beginning, how to hold the instrument, how to breathe through the instrument, how to get one note at a time, and other suggestions. Chapter 2 gets you playing. Chapters 2, 3, and 4 are all based in the key of C. And there's just a big focus on let's get a good sound out of each register of the harmonica. Now, I was intrigued by this no slide thing, because if you know my method, I'm like right out of the gate, we're going to play a C scale, and I'm going to show you how to use the slide in the C scale. Like the alternate F and C are really important to me. The author eventually talks about the alternate F and C, but not until we get to the key of B flat. So anyway, I'm intrigued by this no slide for a while because it gives the student one less thing to think about. They're holding the harmonica, they're getting one note at a time. I know a lot of students come to the Chromatic with a lot of harmonica experience already. They've been diatonic players for years. So, you know, we don't need all this, how do we hold it, how do we play one note at a time. We can do that already. But he's got it in there. So, chapter 2, we are playing in the middle octave of the harmonica in this book. Holes 5 through 8. And it's basically these notes. Chapter 3 continues in the key of C, but we are focused on the lower register. Now, this comes to my attention periodically that the lower and upper registers present challenges to new chromatic harmonica students. And I know there's an issue with harmonica repair professionals and harmonica manufacturers. They get a lot of customer complaints. I can't get hole number 12 to work, you know, the top note of the harmonica. I can't get hole number 1 to work. So he starts in the middle for a reason. Then chapter 3, we get into the lower register. No slide. Chapter 4, as you can probably guess, is going to be the upper register, the 3rd octave of the 12-hole chromatic, starting in hole number 9. So it's all key of C. It's all pretty simple stuff. I could play you one of these first exercises. This is 2.3. You might think that it keeps going up, but it stops right there. So he's got you inhaling and exhaling through the harmonica. So 3 octaves as we go through chapter 4. Chapter 5 covers the key. Chapter 5 is titled. Chapter 5 is titled "Let's Use the Slide," and it introduces the keys of G and F. Now this makes sense to me because this is how I present things to a student, or in my harmonica course specifically. I'm at the top of the circle of fifths. Those three keys are at the top. We got the key of C, and then on one side you'll see the key of G, on the other side you'll see the key of F. And all of this inhaling and exhaling that we've been doing on the harmonica, we just add one slide note. So the key of F, that note is B flat, and the key of G, that note is F sharp. Now I'm of the opinion that we won't talk about me, but I like to introduce the alternate C. So you're using the slide for C in the key of G and in the key of F, and you're using the alternate F in the key of F. But that's me. We're not talking about me. We're talking about this book. Let's use the slide. And he has in here, so what is chapter 6 about? We just are continuing around the circle of fifths, and on either side of the three keys that we've played so far, we've got the key of D, and then the next one on the flat side is the key of B flat. So that's exactly what he presents, D and B flat. And then the following chapter, chapter 7, just keeps moving in either direction around the circle. We've got the key of A on the sharp side of things, and then we have the key of E flat. Chapter 8, so that's 7 keys so far. That's the title of this whole thing, 7 keys and then all keys. Chapter 8 introduces the concept of all of the keys because it has scales written out in all the keys. Now, I want to talk about how he organizes the scales when we get to chapter 8. What you're going to see is a broad key category on each page. Then a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 different scales. So I want to point out that he is he's keeping all of these scales in the same key signature. So that means it's going to start with the major scale, and it's going to go into the relative minor scales. Then it's going to go into the pentatonic scales, which is the same set of notes. We're just removing. The pentatonic scale is a reduction of the diatonic scale. So we're just removing a couple notes. Then we're adding a couple half steps to the pentatonic scales to create blues scales. Now, while I'm here talking about scales, he does have the melodic minor scale. I'm just going to explain something if this confuses you at all. And I am in the process of writing a scale book. It's going to be an ebook about playing minor scales on the harmonica and understanding them. And one of those scale types that I discuss in my book is the melodic minor. I need to explain that there is a traditional music education, traditional classical music approach to what we call the melodic minor scale, where the scale is different going up or going down. It's different both ways. In jazz education, jazz educators started talking about the ascending version of the melodic minor scale as its own scale, and you practice it the same both ways. And so there was a long period of time where educators were calling that the ascending melodic minor. That's a lot of syllables, and you'd see it in print, ascending MM. In recent years, in jazz education, everybody's like, hey, I don't think they had a big conference about it. Jazz educators just started talking about the melodic minor scale without saying it's the ascending version of it. The author here, he has both versions, and so here we have the A minor scale. It's the A melodic minor, and in its traditional form. Next down the line is the jazz melodic minor. So he's he's like letting you know, here, this is the regular way we do the melodic minor, but here's the way the jazz education community and players. Okay, so that's enough about that. I just pointed that out if you're confused. Also, in these lists of scales in each key center, the Dorian minor scale is not listed, because it's maybe not the same key signature. And also, you won't find the Mixolydian or dominant scale in this list of 9 scales, because that might be perceived as a different key signature also, or even a different key center. So he's left those out. I think they're important scales. Just letting you know, like, if you were working through this book, you're never done. You're never done learning an instrument. There's always something else. But I feel like those are 2 very important scales for jazz improvisation, to have a concept of playing a C dominant scale and an A Dorian minor scale. Since he's breaking this down by, theoretically in the key of C, he might have listed a G Mixolydian scale. But anyway, I'm just telling you how the author has organized this book. And we are in chapter 8. Just to review, chapter 1 was chapter 1 was a basic introduction to the harmonica. Chapter 2, 3, and 4 are all about playing in the key of C in the 3 different registers of a 12-hole harmonica. And chapter 5 introduces the keys of G and F. Chapter 6 introduces the keys of D and B flat. Chapter 7 introduces the keys of A and E flat. And chapter 8 are these scales that I'm talking about. It's just page after page of the same thing, but it's all nicely written out for you. And me and the author agree that you should memorize the scales, and that you don't need to overburden yourself trying to get all 9 of them. He emphasizes that too. I just want to say this about this book. I for years wanted to put together a harmonica method, and I started to. The idea of teaching all keys was really kind of overwhelming as a teacher and thinking about the student. So I broke mine into 3 segments, and so I have a volume 1 and a 2, and number 3 isn't completed yet. But 4 keys each. 3 times 4 is 12. That's 12 keys. I think the author was just very eager to get a lot of information out, and I'm going to talk about that more. But I think he just wanted to go for it. I know teaching privately, you have to go very slowly, but you have a lot of things of like, I wish I could write down all my ideas for how a student would continue. And I think for the author here, he's had an amazing career as a composer and as a performer, as a recording artist. He's like, this is all the stuff that brought me to my present location. And he's inviting the rest of us to come and join him in his lofty heights as a great musician. There's not any kind of shortcut. Like, I know I've heard people complain that this book is too hard. We need a book that will give us a lifetime of things to work on, like to just keep going. And if you studied with any kind of professional, they may or may not push you. I try to be like, I'm apologizing. I'm sorry that it's so hard that you have to exercise discipline and spend time practicing. And but I don't think I should apologize. It's just the way it is. If you want to be great at anything, I'm thinking of Olympic athletes in high school that get up at 4 a.m. and they go skate. They go ice skate for 2 hours and then they go to school. Then after school, they go ice skate some more. It's the way to become great at anything. It requires time and discipline. So anyway, where was I? I was going through the chapters. This is this is where we are going through the chapters. Chapter 8 is very straightforward. It's just scales in all the 12 keys, and it moves around the circle of fifths. It starts in C, goes to G, goes to D, goes to A. Let me see if I'm right. Yeah, C, G, D, A, E, going around the circle of fifths. Chapter 9 is entitled The Other Keys. So we've studied kind of intensely, a little more intensely, other than just playing scales. We played all the scales in the previous chapter, in all the keys, but thinking about chapters 5, 6, and 7, and the previous chapter where we worked in the key of C, there was a lot of patterns, a lot of spending time in each key. So now he's saying, hey, let's do the same thing with the remaining 5 keys. So that's what chapter 9 is about. Chapter 10 is actually one of the easier chapters. It's very straightforward. There's a lot of challenging material in the book where you're skipping intervals and playing melodies that may be unfamiliar to you. So it's a challenge. Playing arpeggios is pretty straightforward. And just an example, exercise 10.1 in the book here. That's it. That's exercise 10.1. It's an arpeggio in C, all blow notes. You do have to find your skip spots, where to skip. But as it continues, it will be challenging, but at least it's straightforward. It's like I'm only playing chord tones here. Let's talk about so chapter 10 is all about arpeggios. I think about this book being translated from the Italian, and the word arpeggio is an Italian word, and that was one word that they didn't have to translate. If you ever intensely study music, you are also going to learn some Italian words. The word piano is an Italian word, and crescendo and decrescendo, those are Italian terms. So those are arpeggiating triads, and then he has seventh chords. So we arpeggiate major, then minor, and then at some point we get into, well, we can look at this, major seventh chords. I think I was not supposed to discuss all of this until my last point, where I talk about the details of what's in each chapter. So anyway, I deviated from my outline, but you get the idea. Chapter 10, don't be intimidated by chapter 10. It's very straightforward. We're playing chord tones, and eventually we get into arpeggiating seventh chords. Here's, there's a dominant seventh chord. See, I know how to play the harmonica. So that's chapter 10, and what's our next big category? No slide until chapter 4, 7 keys, then all keys. The next category is lists, and this is kind of fun for me because the book starts off with a list. Right at the beginning of the book, before the introduction, it has a section about the author, and then it has a list of albums that he's recorded. It has his discography as a leader, his discography as a sideman. So there's a nice list. I like lists. I'm going through a list right now as I make this presentation. Um, so just be aware that the discography has grown since the publication of this book. And I'm sure his discography as a sideman has also grown. It's been 10 years since this book has been published. So that's the first list, is his discography. At the end of chapter 4, you're going to find a list that fills the entire page of suggested books. And some of these books I already have in my library, but these are books about music theory, about reading music, and particularly reading jazz rhythms. The whole book is leaning in a jazz direction, a jazz harmonica direction. But anyway, an ambitious list of books, and I get the feeling that, the author really wanted to go for it with presenting all of the keys. But I also sense that the author feels like it's not enough. There's more things I want to say. So he's referring you to other books, because the author is saying, I can't present all the music theory information that I would like to present, but they are laid out very nicely in these other books. So that's a nice list, the suggested books list. The end of chapter 5, you are going to find a list of tunes from one of 3 fake books. And he's going to present tunes from other sheer music company fake books. I think they make the best fake books, the most accurate, the easiest to read. I've got volume 3 right here, the new real book. So there's a volume 1 and a volume 2 of these books. He presents tunes that are, hey, we've been studying these keys in this chapter, so here's some tunes that I suggest that you look at. Don't skip past those songs. They're great. One of the songs he recommends is Gentle Rain. That's just 8 bars of Gentle Rain. That's in the list of one of the chapters. So chapter 5, songs that are in this list are going to be in the key of G and F and some of the relative minor keys, and also the key of C major, because we've been playing that in chapters 2, 3, and 4. So a list of tunes from the real book. And I think that even if you can't improvise over these songs, even if the idea of playing over chord changes intimidates you, these are great melodies. So don't skip past the list. I think one of the best ways to learn the harmonica is by playing songs. Not just exercises, but songs. So I like lists, and I like these lists. So that's the end of chapter 5, and you're going to find the same kind of list at the end of chapter 6 and 7. A list of fake book tunes that correspond with the keys that you've been working on. And he's chosen these songs because also they're not super difficult to play. You might find the songs to be easier than the etudes that he presents in each chapter, because at least you may have heard them and you're familiar with them. So, okay, so that's part of the category of lists. Then at the end of chapter 9 is the other keys, remember? You're going to find, again, a list of songs in those keys from the fake book that you could try. And there is an additional list on that page. There's another list of jazz theory books and books about jazz improvisation. So specifically, okay. Chapter 10. At the end of chapter 10, chapter 10, remember, is the chapter about arpeggios. The end of chapter 10 is a discography of harmonica albums. and they're categorized by jazz, tango, Brazil, classical, and other. There's an other category that includes some of the Celtic music that Brendan Powers has recorded. A big list of harmonica albums. So, I mean, you could learn a lot just by listening to all that music. You could be inspired. You could get that sound in your head of anytime you're learning an instrument, to get the sound of the instrument in your head played by professionals. And your body will begin to do what it needs to do in order to get that sound. So listening, I think, is very important. I don't believe he lists his own album because he already did that at the very beginning of the book. Is there any other lists in the book? Yeah, after the discography, there's a whole catalog of Sheer Music Company books. Jazz theory books, jazz piano books, real books, and so forth. Great catalog. And it's not presented exactly as a list because it truly is a catalog. It has a photo of each of the books. Let's talk about the next big thing in my list, which is what is the actual content of each chapter. Other than talking about playing in these specific keys, what's going on here? So I have another list that falls under this list of what the content of the chapters are that are focusing on specific keys. I'll just go down. Can we go down this list? Here we go. Scales and scale patterns. Let me just lump that all together as one. Scales and scale patterns. Melodic etudes. So there's etudes to play, but they're not boring. There's a nice quality to them where they have a nice melody. Melodic etudes with chord accompaniment that would be on the CD that I don't have. And then so under this category, one of the things he's done is he's written etudes based on the names of the months of the year. So we have in this book January through December. There's etudes with those names. I think those have the chords behind them. And then the final category of songs are songs from the author's discography. So this goes along with listening, but okay, so songs that he's written and recorded. And that makes sense. Let's talk about one of the categories of scale patterns. This is in chapter 5, and this is a G major scale, but it's presented in triplets. And we go up 3 degrees, and then we move up to the next scale degree and do the same pattern. So. Then it does bring us back down. Here's one where the triple pattern is inversed, reversed. So instead of climbing up, we're climbing down each one. And so on. Another scale pattern he has as an example is the F major scale in fourths, which is a challenge to me. It's not something I've spent a lot of time working on. I've spent more time playing scales in thirds. So anyway, this is the F scale in fourths. I won't play the whole thing, but. So each of those chapters where he's working on specific keys, he has stuff like this: scales, scale patterns, melodic etudes with chords behind them, and songs from his discography. Anyway, I hope this helps to shed more light on this book. There is a new expanded edition, which I don't have. It has a chapter 11 of transcribed solos from Toots and Stevie, and I don't know who else. But it's supposed to be a bunch more pages. 200, did I read that? 200 more or 100 more pages? Here it is on Amazon. New expanded edition, 100 more pages. If you have found this video to be helpful, please like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you've not subscribed, please consider subscribing. And I will talk to you guys later. I'm always enthusiastic about the harmonica, and I always have something else to say. So thank you for your support.
Gonna be